Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph and we'll be learning today Mirz Hashem Daf Tzadik Zayin Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Krias Shema and we start today, I was about to say we start today with a brand new Siman, but I realized this morning that I thought we finished off Siman Samach Bais yesterday, but there is a final Sif in Siman Samach Bais, Sif Hey, on the top of Tzadik Zayin Amud Aleph that has no Mishnah Berurah. So I finished the Mishnah Berurah yesterday of Siman Samach Bais without realizing that there's another Sif in the Shulchan Aruch. So before we begin Siman Samach Gimel, let's just read Sif Hey, top of Tzadik Zayin Amud Aleph. Says the Mechaber Sif Hey, Tzarech Shliach Tzibur lahashmiya koiloi b'shma Yisrael. The Chazan, the Shliach Tzibur, is supposed to raise his voice when he says Shema Yisrael, Kedei sheyishmuhu hakohol, so that the Kehillah should be able to hear him crying out Shema Yisrael v'yamlichu shem shamayim yachad, and then the tzibur together with the chazan should be mamlich the Rabbeinu Shalom. We should say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We should be miyached Shammai together as a tzibur. No Mishnah Berurah, and now finally you know what? There is a bir halacha. So let's take a look at bir halacha. Dibra maskil kedei sheyishmu. Says the Chavetz Chaim, va'afilu mi she'enoi mispalel ata. This is every halacha is very important, but this is a halacha that's not necessarily so well known, and it appears here in the bir halacha. So let's read the bir halacha. The bir halacha says that when the shliach tzibur says Shema Yisrael out loud, and the rest of the tzibur joins him, afilu mi she'enoi mispalel ata. Even somebody who happens to be together with the tzibur who's not davening right now, tzarech loymar gamkein imahim. He has to say Krias Shema, the first pasuk, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and Baruch Shem K'vayid Malchusay L'Olam Vayed. He has to say it together with them. Ukidlakamon b'Siman Samachei Sif Beis, like we're going to see Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach later on in Siman Samachei. The toiv, and it would be good, says the Chavetz Chaim, sheyechavein oz shaloi lotzeis bazeh yidei Krias Shema. If this person is not davening right now, and he's planning on davening later, meaning he hasn't davened Shachris yet. Maybe right now he's chazering yesterday's daf before Shachris. So he didn't daven yet, he plans on davening later. He hears the tzibur say Shema Yisrael, he should say Shema with them, but he should preferably have kavana that he's not saying Shema now to be Yoitze his chiyuv of Krias Shema. Why? Kedei sheyikayim achakach brachos im Krias Shema divrei Torah. So that later on, when he does say Krias Shema and Berchos Krias Shema, he should be Yoitze the proper way. He should be Yoitze Berchos Krias Shema together with being Yoitze Krias Shema at the same time. Okay, now we move on to Siman Samach Gimel. Siman Samach Gimel, Leishev b'shas Krias Shema, which literally means to sit at the time that we recite Krias Shema, but it's not really that you need to sit, but we'll see this inside. V'lo yishan, and definitely you should not fall asleep. Uboy tes se'ifim, and here we have 9 se'ifim. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, Korei oisa mahalech, you could recite Krias Shema, and you could be Yoitze your chiyuv if you're walking, oimed, or standing still, shoichev, or laying down, and we're going to see that the Shitas HaMechaber is that you could be Yoitze your chiyuv of Krias Shema lechatchila if you're laying down. So Kari say Bahalech, oimed, shoichev, roichev al gabe behema, or if you're riding a horse, yoshev, or if you're sitting. So according to the Shitas HaMechaber, you could be Yoitze your chiyuv to say Krias Shema no matter how you are, whether you don't have to be sitting still, you don't have to be sitting by a table, you could be walking, you could be standing, you could be sitting, you could be riding an animal, you could be laying down. And of course, if you take a look in the Be'er HaGoyla, this is brought down from Brachas Daf Yud Amud Beis. This is the famous Shita of Bais Hillel. As we're going to see, there's a famous machlokes Bais Hillel and Bais Shammai. And the machlokes surrounds how you understand the pasuk in Krias Shema, b'shachbecha uvekumecha. We've said already many times that the way we learn b'shachbecha uvekumecha is Keshitas Bais Hillel, which B'shach B'chav Kumecha is coming to teach me the Zman of Krias Shema. B'shach B'chav means that we have to say Krias Shema Shal Arvis in the Zman of Shchiva, when people are laying down to go to sleep. Uvekumecha means that we have to be we have to recite Krias Shema to be yotze the chiv of Krias Shema Shal Yoim. That we have to do bikumecha, when people are getting up for the day. So again, according to Bais Hillel, b'shach b'chav bikumecha relates to the zmanim of Krias Shema, when people are laying down and when people are getting up. Not so Bais Shammai. Bais Shammai learns that b'shach b'cha uvikumecha is coming to tell you how you have to recite Krias Shema. At night, you recite Krias Shema b'shach b'cha, when you're laying down. During the day, you recite Krias Shema uvikumecha, you recite it sitting up or standing up. That's Shitas Bais Shammai, we paskin like Bais Hillel. Therefore, based on the psak of Bais Hillel, says the Mechaber, you could be Kairi Krias Shema, Mahalech, Limud, Shoichev, Roichev, Yoshev, and that, says Bais Hillel, is based on the pasuk that says Uvelech techa b'darech. You could do it as you're going on your way, however you're going, however you're moving around, however you're physically situated at that moment when it's time to say Krias Shema. That's how you could say Krias Shema. Now the Mechaber comes, and the Mechaber qualifies what he said, that you could recite Krias Shema shoichev, laying down. Says the Mechaber, while it's true that you could recite Krias Shema lying down, there is a qualification. Avaloi prakton. You cannot recite Krias Shema while you are laying in a manner that is called prakton. What is prakton? So the Mechaber defines prakton based on the Rambam. He says, what's prakton? Dahainu, shepanav tuchais pakarka. He's laying on his stomach, face down, so that his face is on the ground. Literally, karka is the ground, but even on a mattress. It doesn't mean necessarily on the ground. The point is, he's laying on his stomach, face down. His face is downwards. That is prakton. Oi, there's another way that's also called prakton. Oi mushlach al gaboi, or he's laying on his back, upanav lamaila, so that his face is straight up. Those two manners of laying down are called prakton. And you're not allowed to recite Krias Shema prakton. Why not? Because that, we're going to see, is not derech eretz. That's considered derech gaiva. Somehow you're being mekabel ol malchus shamayim while you're laying in a way that is antithetical to being mekabel ol malchus shamayim. You're laying on your back like this. That's not being mekabel ol malchus shamayim. So to also laying down on the ground with your face down, don't tell me you're being mekabel ol malchus shamayim. So this is a halachah mishum derech eretz. That's what this is based on. So the Mechaber says, "Avaloi prakton, dainu shapanav tuches pakakoi b'shach hagabai upanav lamayla. Aval koirei v'hu shoichev al tzidoi." But you could say Krias Shema laying down if you're laying on your side. So here we have the Shitas HaMechaber, paskin like Bais Hillel, and we could even say Krias Shema laying down. It just depends how you're laying. You have to be al tzidoi, you have to be on your side. You can't be flat on your back or with your face down. Now comes along the Ramah, says the Ramah Hagah, and the Ramah at face value seems to be qualifying what the Mechaber just said. Now, we're going to see in the Biur Halacha, the Chavetz Chaim is going to tell us that the Ramah is not being mefaresh the Mechaber. He's not telling you that this is what the Mechaber means. He's actually being cholik on the Mechaber. He's disagreeing with the Mechaber. The Mechaber said you could recite Krias Shema laying down. The clear implication from the words of the Mechaber seemed to be that even lechatchila, you could say Krias Shema laying down, as long as you're laying on your side. Says the Ramah here, Hagah, this that the Mechaber says, that you could say Krias Shema while you're laying down, provided that you're not prakton, and that you're laying on your side, says the Ramah, me'achar shekvar shoichev, since you already laid down, ve'eka tircha la'amoid, and it would be a tircha, it would be a bother for you to have to get up. That's why you could go ahead and you could say Krias Shema laying down. So the Ramah is saying that this is a b'diavad. This that we're saying you could lay in Krias Shema laying down, if you're already laying down, And the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, not only does the Ramah mean that you're already laying down, you already got undressed, and you already got into bed, and you're already laying down, and now you say to yourself, oy vey, I didn't say Krias Shema Shel Arvis. Did you daven Ma'ariv? But whatever, you didn't say Krias Shema Shel Arvis. So maybe you daven Ma'ariv early, right? Maybe it's Friday night, and you made Shabbos early, and the Gabbai gave a clap, and he said, everybody remember to repeat Krias Shema. So now you not only are you saying Krias Shema al Amita, but you weren't Yoitzi yet Krias Shema Shel Arvis. So now you realize you have to say Krias Shema Shel Arvis. You're already undressed. You're already in bed. So now it would be a big tercha for you to get up and get dressed and everything else and say Krias Shema in a proper manner. Says the Ramah, in that case, since you're already laying down, it would be a big tercha. You could say Krias Shema while you're laying down if you're al tzidoi, if you're laying on your side. But if you're not laying down, it's zecher not lechatchila to say Krias Shema laying down. It's only mishum tercha that we're allowing you to do it. That's what the Ramah says. Now let's just finish the sif. Says the Mechaber weiter, I told you that you could say Krias Shema laying down, and I told you that the qualification is that you have to be lying on your side. You cannot be prakdon. Says the Mechaber, if a person is very heavy, and because of that he cannot lay on his side, or he's an ill individual, and because of that he cannot lay on his side, he can only lay on his back or on his stomach, he should at least turn himself partially to the side, and he says you should say Krias Shema that way. Now let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. First, says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in aleph. Mahalech. The Mechaber said you could say Krias Shema while you're walking. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ein lekamon b'sif gimel. Make sure you take a look at sif gimel, and we're going to see that later in the shir, where the Mechaber qualifies a little bit this halachah that you could say Krias Shema while you're walking. So we'll see that in sif gimel. Eis cut in Bais. Says the Mishnah Berurah, prakdon. You can't recite Krias Shema while you're prakdon, laying either on your stomach or flat on your back. Says the Mishnah Berurah, va'afilu muta ma'at al tzida gam kein aser. When the Mechaber says that you cannot say Krias Shema prakdon, that includes not only laying flat on your back or all the way down on your stomach, even if you're turned a little bit to the side, that's also included in prakdon, which is aser. Now, we know that from the qualification of the Mechaber at the end of the sif. The Mechaber at the end of the sif is matir a choyle, or an overweight individual who cannot turn to his side to recite Krias Shema partially on his side. So clearly that means that it's not lechatchila. That's why the Mishnah Berurah says over here, even muta ma'at al tzida gam kein aser, unless you're choyle or you're overweight. Why? What's the problem with prakdon? Because this is antithetical to being mekabel al malchus shamayim. You look like you're laying like a prince. That's not a way that you're being mekabel al malchus shamayim. Oyis cotton gimel. Now, the Ramah came along, and the Ramah said, the Mechaber says that you could recite Krias Shema to be yoitzi your chiyuv when you're laying down. Says the Ramah, when is that true? Shekvar shoichev, because you already laid down. Ritzainer loymar, what the Ramah wants to say is, you laid down. Upashat kol masha olav, you already got undressed. This is what he brings down from the Magen Avram. You already got into bed. You already got undressed. V'ketarech lamoid v'lachzer l'lav sham. So now it would be a big tircha for you to get out of bed, get dressed, and go say Krias Shema. So in that case, we're matir that you could go ahead and you could say Krias Shema while you're laying down. Aval, however, says the Chavetz Chaim, im shoichev b'chalukai, if somebody laid down and he's dressed, tzarech lamoid, he has to get up. That's the Shitas HaRamah. Va'ayin be'biur halacha. And at this point, the Chavetz Chaim sends us to the biur halacha, dibur hamaschil me'achar shekvar shoichev. And it's very kedai for us to take a look at this biur halacha. Says the biur halacha, ayin b'Mishnah Berurah, take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, where I wrote in the Mishnah Berurah, right? In the Mishnah Berurah just followed the flow of the Mechaber and the Ramah as it's written in the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah, the Shulchan Aruch said, the Mechaber said, that you're allowed to recite Krias Shema laying down. Came along the Ramah, and the Ramah qualified it. The Ramah said, you can say Krias Shema laying down if you already laid down and you already got undressed, and at least that's the way the Magen Avram interprets the words of the Ramah. You already laid down, you already got into bed, you already got undressed. Now you can say Krias Shema laying down. It's a b'diavad, but we're not going to be matriach you to get up and get dressed. So again, like I spoke out, a simple reading of the Mechaber and the Ramah, it sounds like the Ramah is just being mefaresh the Mechaber. Now, says the Bir Halacha, no, don't make that mistake. The Ramah is actually being cholik on the Mechaber. Says the Ramah, this qualification that I gave in the Mishnah Berurah, kol zehu rak lefi das Hagah. This is the shitas haRamah. This sasam kishitas Rabbeinu Yoina. The Ramah paskins like the Rabbeinu Yoina, a Rishon in Masechtas Brachas. He paskins like the Rabbeinu Yoina in Brachas, who holds that saying Krias Shema while laying down is a b'diavad. Aval beBais Yosef, the Mechaber in the Bais Yosef on the Torah, pasak kapaiskim shachol kenal Rabbeinu Yoina. The Mechaber paskins like those Rishonim who are cholik on the Rabbeinu Yoina. Usvir luhu, they hold that to say Krias Shema while laying down, provided that you're laying on your side, is even lechatchila. No problem. Because if you're really laying on your side, it's not a problem of derech gaiva. Derech gaiva, the derech eretz problem, the problem of being mekabel ol malchus shamayim in a way that's antithetical to kabbalas ol malchus shamayim, that's only prakton. That's laying flat on your back or laying down on your stomach. As far as saying Krias Shema laying down, Bais Hillel says, you can lay Krias Shema however you want. So there's no problem of saying Krias Shema laying down, just you have to be on your side. That's the sheet of the Rishonim that argue on Rabbeinu Yoina. And says the Chavetz Chaim, that's the way the Bais Yosef paskins. B'Bais Yosef pasak ha-paiskim shachol kenal Rabbeinu Yoina. Usvir luhu dafilu lechatchila mutar lishkav al tzida v'likroi. Da al tzida mamish ain't a nikra derech gaiva, because as long as you're laying on your side, that's not a derech eretz issue. That's not called derech gaiva. So the Bir Halacha is very clear. We have over here a machlokes, the Mechaber, and the Ramah. And that's going to be very important to realize as we read the Mishnah Berurah today. The Mechaber holds it's a lichatchila to say Krias Shema laying down as long as you're laying mamish on your side. The Ramah holds it's not lichatchila. You're only allowed to do it b'diavad. We're matter you to do it if you're already undressed in bed. Then we're matter you to do it. Okay, so now that we've established that we have a machlokes here, the Mechaber and the Ramah, how do we paskin? Says the Bir Halacha, V'hinei lahalacha mashma b'divrei ha'olas tamid v'taz u'magen Avram. Halacha l'maisa, it sounds from the olas tamid, the taz, and the magen Avram, the yesh litvais kahabes Yosef, that we should paskin like the Mechaber. V'chein pasak ha'magen gibayrim, and the magen gibayrim also paskins like the Mechaber. Omnam, however, b'sefer El Yazuta paisek haRamah. The El Yazuta paskins like the Ramah. And this is also going to be important to remember. So too the Pri Megadim on the Taz, the Pri Megadim in the Mishpatzos, also says to paskin like the Ramah. Mitzadei dadin im haRamah, that it's a b'diavad to say Krias Shema laying down. V'chein b'chedusha Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Mitzaded loymar de lahachmer yesh lifsay kedas Rabbeinu Yoina. The Rabbi Akiva Eiger also says we should be machmer like the opinion of the Rabbeinu Yoina, like the Ramah. Al kain bevada yesh lahachmer lechatchila. Therefore, says the Bir Halacha, says the Chavetz Chaim, lechatchila we should be machmir like the Ramah, and we should only say Krias Shema laying down, even if we're laying down on our sides, if it would involve a tircha. So again, you made Shabbos early, and you already got undressed, and you already got into bed, and now you realize that you didn't repeat Krias Shema, so now it would be a big tircha for you to get up and get dressed and everything else. So then if you're laying mamish on your side, you could firtzach like the Mechaber, and you could go ahead and you could say Krias Shema in that way. But otherwise, according to the Chavetz Chaim, In the Biur Halacha here, he paskins we should be machmer like the Ramah, and we should preferably, unless it involves a tircha, we should not say Krias Shema laying down. Rather, a person who finds himself in bed, if he's dressed, it's not a big tircha, he should get up and he should say Krias Shema at least sitting up. He shouldn't say Krias Shema laying down in bed. Now, there's one thing that I find fascinating about this Biur Halacha, and that is that if you look in the Darkei Moshe, which is the Ramah on the Torah, the Darkei Moshe has an entry on the Bais Yosef. And the Darkei Moshe, the Ramah in the Darkei Moshe, says that his Shita is even according to the Mechaber. And it's a pellet to me that the Mishnah Berurah doesn't, that the Biur Halacha didn't mention this. The Darkei Moshe in the Torah, he says, the Bais Yosef says over here that he paskins like the other Rishonim. He doesn't say he paskins that way. He says the Bais Yosef is mashma, like those Rishonim that are cholik on the Rabbeinu Yoina. But he says, if you look weiter in Reish, I'll tell you in a minute where, sorry. In Reish Lamed Tes, he says, if you take a look at the Bais Yosef, in Reish Lamed Tes, the Bais Yosef is mashma, and the paskins like the Rabbeinu Yoina. So, we're talking here about what did the Ramah mean? Was the Ramah coming to be cholik on the Mechaber, or was the Ramah coming to be mefarish the Mechaber? The Biur Halacha over here is coming out very clearly that the Ramah is being cholik on the Mechaber. But from the Ramah's own words in the Darkei Moshe, it does not sound that way. It sounds like the Ramah was really being mefarish the Mechaber. And the Ramah holds that the Mechaber holds like him. Okay? I'm not arguing on the Chavetz Chaim, Chas v'Chalila. And the Chavetz Chaim chose to write it this way, and the Chavetz Chaim was smarter than me. The Chavetz Chaim saw the Darkei Moshe, and the Chavetz Chaim is smarter than me. But I'm just pointing out, if you look at the Darkei Moshe, that's what the Darkei Moshe says. Now, that's one thing that I wanted to point out. The next thing that I wanted to point out on this is that we should realize that this discussion of how you should recite Krias Shema, and this discussion of whether reciting Krias Shema laying down is lechatchila or b'diavad, let's remember which Krias Shema we are discussing the halachas of. We're discussing the halachas of Krias Shema shel Shacharis and Krias Shema shel Arvis. We're discussing the Krias Shema of the mitzvah aseh da'araisa of your chiyuv midaraisa to recite Krias Shema twice a day. We're not talking about Krias Shema Lamita. Krias Shema Lamita is a different din. That's not this din. So how does this apply to Krias Shema Lamita, which in the normal scenario, this whole discussion of whether or not you could say Krias Shema laying down, for most people at most times, that's probably when it's really negeah. It's mostly negeah to Krias Shema Lamita. Okay, somebody woke up late, and he looks at his watch, and he realizes, oh my goodness, there's 2 minutes to Krias Shema. I better say Krias Shema right now. So he's going to have a shiloh. Could he say Krias Shema while he's laying in bed? He's also going to have other shilohs. He has to wipe his hands, at least on Midi de Menaki. I guess technically he could use his blanket, or he could use his wooden headboard. He didn't say Berachas HaTorah, but that's pashtus okay, because he's not learning Torah. He's saying it derech tachtunim or derech tefillah, because he has to be Mekayim Chiyuv of Krias Shema. Fine. So he might have a shiloh. Could he say Krias Shema laying down? Again, the person who made Shabbos early, he might have a shiloh of say Krias Shema laying down. But it's probably mostly negeah every night to Krias Shema Lamita. But that's not what we're talking about here. That's not reciting Krias Shema to be Mekayim the Chiyuv. That's not germane to this discussion. And if you take a look in Dirshu footnote number 4, he says over here, Uba'oifet shekar Krias Shema Lamita, if what you're doing is you're saying Krias Shema Lamita, ukvar yotza chayvas Krias Shema shel Arvis, you were already Yotze Yechiv of Kriya Shema Shal Arvis. Kasa b'shar tzion l'kamon in Siman Reish Lamed Tesif Katan Yud she'af sheyesh machmirim afilu b'tzir kazeh sheloi likroi Kriya Shema b'shchiv al tzidoi. There are those that are machmir, like the Ramah over here, that even by Kriya Shema al Hamita, they won't say it laying down even on the side, because they want to be machmir like the Ramah, that you don't say Kriya Shema lechatchila even when you're laying on your side. Still, b'chol zayis hamekel ein limchis biyadai. If you want to be mekel like the Mechaber on Kriya Shema al Hamita, and you want to say Kriya Shema al Hamita while you're laying down on your side, you can't object to such a person. Shafilu b'Kriya Shema al shel chayva das rova paiskim lahakil lekayra kishu shaychev al tzidai. It comes out from the Bir Halacha over here that most people paskin like the Mechaber, even by Kriya Shema shel chayva, that really lechatchila you're allowed to say it while you're laying on your side. They don't paskin like the Ramah, who's machmir. So you want to be machmir like the Ramah and Kriya Shema al Hamita? You don't have to be machmir like the Ramah, or at least ein limchais biyadai. If somebody doesn't want to be machmir like the Ramah by Kriya Shema al Hamita, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Aruch HaShulchan brings down, he's mitzayin this machlokes of the Mechaber and the Ramah. He bases it. He brings down the machlokes Rishonim. It's based on a machlokes Rishonim. He says that the Rambam says that lichatchila aval kishashoichev al tzidoi mutar likreis lichatchila, according to the Rambam. He brings down other Rishonim, the Rabbeinu Yoina, like the Ramah says, who are machmir. But he says, Umiu Rav HaPaiskim Einam Seivrim Kain. Says Rav HaPaiskim aren't machmir like this Ramah. Okay. Another interesting Dirshu footnote here is Dirshu footnote number 3, because we're talking about here about laying on your side, and we're saying that according to the Mechaber, if you're laying on your side, it's mamish lechatchila. So what's called laying on your side? Very interesting footnote here, footnote number 3. Ve'emu chayle, if somebody is ill, sheroishay muram ktsas al karoyos, and his head is propped up by pillows. Ach eina yachal l'sheves legamri. He's not mamish sitting up, but he's propped up on pillows. Das hagoyin Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zatzal shekishem she'anoite ktsas al hatzad choshev kishoichev al tzidoi. Right? The Mechaber said that you're not allowed to say Kriya Shema prakton, but if you're a chayla, right, lechatchila, you have to lay mamish on your side. But if you're a chayla and you can't lay mamish on your side, you should turn yourself a little bit to the side. Says Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, propping yourself up on pillows or raising the head of the bed is equivalent to turning partially to your side, because you're not laying mamish prakton. So that would also be called laying partially, at least, on your side. Okay. Now we are up to Ois Cotton Dalid in the Mishnah Berurah. The Mechaber said if somebody is a balbasar, somebody is heavy, he's overweight, or he's ill. No, oh, there he's still, or he's ill, and he cannot lay on his side. Ve'ena yachol. Says the Mishnah Berurah, aval im yachol al tzidai, if this person has the ability to lay mamish on his side, afilu rak bepasuk rishon levad, even if he only has the ability to do it for the very first pasuk of Kriya Shema, mechuyev lasis kain. He has to. Now the Mishnah Berurah says, v'chol shkedim yachol l'kroisa b'yeshiva. And certainly, if he's able to sit up, at least for the first pasuk of Kriya Shema, he should sit up. Now, what's interesting about this Mishnah Berurah is that Mishnah Berurah Ois Cotton Dalid is going on the words of the Mechaber. But the last phrase of this Mishnah Berurah, v'chol shkedim yachol l'kroisa b'yeshiva, certainly if he's able to sit up, he should sit up. That's not Shitas HaMechaber. Because Shitas HaMechaber is that it's mamish lechatchila to say Krias Shema while you're laying on your side. So no, if he's able to sit up, he doesn't have to sit up. If he's able to lay mamish on his side, he should lay mamish on his side. So why does the Mishnah Berurah say v'chol shkedim yachal l'kraisa b'yeshiva? I believe he says that because he wants to paskin lamaisa like the Ramah. And that's what he indicated to us in the Bir Halacha. He indicated to us that at least l'chatchila you should be machmir like the Ramah. So he's going like the Ramah. So he says if you're able to sit up, you should sit up. And in the Sharet Zion's Cotton Gimel, he says this is pashut. But yeah, it's pashut lefi the Ramah, not lefi the Mechaber. Okay. Now let's move on to Sif Bais. Says the Mechaber Sif Bais. Mi sheroitze lahachmir, somebody who wants to be machmir, lamoid, to stand up, kishehu yoshev, when he was sitting, v'lekroisa mu'umad, somebody wants to be machmir. What does this mean that he wants to be machmir? Well, I told you that in Sif Aleph, when the Mechaber says that you're allowed to say Krias Shema, whether you're standing, whether you're sitting, whether you're laying, whether you're walking, that's Shitas Bais Hillel. Machlokes Bais Shammai and Bais Hillel. Bais Shammai holds b'shachbecha uvekumecha. During the day, Krias Shachris, you want to be yotzi your chiyuv of Krias Shachris. According to Bais Shammai, you got to be standing. So this person decided he wants to be machmer like Bais Shammai. He don't want to be mekel like Bais Hillel. He wants to be machmer like Bais Shammai. Says the Mechaber. Somebody wants to be machmer like Bais Shammai, and he wants to stand up while he was sitting. And he wants to recite Krias Shema while standing. Nikra avarion. He is called a transgressor. He's not allowed to do this. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah Cotton Hay. Somebody wants to be machmer. Why is this a problem? The halachah Bais Hillel. Because we paskin like Bais Hillel. The Svira Lahu, Bais Hillel holds the Hadiksiv Uvekumecha, that when the pasuk says Uvekumecha, ain't a kavana ba'amida kedas Bais Shammai. The kavana of the pasuk that you say Krias Shema Uvekumecha when you're getting up, it doesn't mean when you're standing like Shitas Bais Shammai. Elo, what does it mean? Bizman shederech b'nei adam lakom mimitasam. That pasuk of Uvekumecha is coming to tell me the Zman Krias Shema. That the Zman Krias Shema shel Shachris is when people are getting up. And it's also to be machmir like Bais Shammai. Now let's pause here for a second, and I want to read to you very beautiful from the Aruch HaShulchan. You already know that I love the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says like this. He says, V'afal gav de bekama pluktois shel Bais Shammai u Bais Hillel. Even though in many cases when we have a machlokes Bais Shammai and Bais Hillel, the Bais Shammai machmir u Bais Hillel mekel, and we find that Bais Shammai is machmir and Bais Hillel is mekel. Many times we find that if somebody wants to be machmir like Bais Shammai, we don't protest. If Bais Shammai is being machmir and Bais Hillel is being mekel, you want to be machmir like Bais Shammai? Yes, the halachah follows Bais Hillel. But you want to do like Bais Shammai, you want to be machmir, says the Aruch HaShulchan, we find in many places that that's okay. We certainly don't always have a Sifin Shulchan Aruch that tells me that if you're machmir like Bais Shammai, you're an avarian. So how come over here we have that? Explains the Aruch HaShulchan very beautifully. Pluktas zu eine doime l'chala pluktas. This machlokes Bais Shammai and Bais Hillel is different than the other ones. The bechol apluktais, because by most of the machlokes in Bais Shammai and Bais Hillel, gam Bais Hillel moidim sheyish chumra b'divrei Bais Shammai. Even Bais Hillel is maskim that there is room for a chumra like Bais Shammai. Ulechein misha roitze lahachmir, lama lo yachmir. And therefore, if somebody wants to be machmir, go ahead. Why shouldn't he be machmir? We're not going to stop him from being machmir. This reminds me actually of a very famous story, and a very telling story, that happened with Rav Moshe Zechitzad V'Kadosh L'Vracha. Once happened that a relative of Rav Moshe's lost a relative that he was mechuyev to sit shiva for. So they went to the Levaya, and after the Levaya, this fellow went over to Rav Moshe, and he started asking Rav Moshe a bunch of shaylos in Hilchos Avelus. He's going home now, and he has to sit shiva. So he's asking Rav Moshe a bunch of shilas in Hilchos Avelos. So every shilah that he asked, Rav Moshe listened, and Rav Moshe answered, Mekin mekel zayin, Mekin mekel zayin, Mekin mekel zayin. It's well known that the halachah by Hilchos Avelos is that by Hilchos Avelos, halachah kedivrei hamekel. The halachah follows the mekel. That's in Hilchos Avelos, we paskin like the kula de kashita. So every shilah that this person asked Rav Moshe said, Mekin mekel zayin, Mekin mekel zayin, Mekin mekel zayin. You could be mekel. Finally, after getting all of these kulas from Rav Moshe, he looked at Rav Moshe and he said, but I'm not looking for kulas. I'm not looking for kulas. You keep telling me I can be mekel. I'm not looking for kulas. I'm asking you what you would do. So Rav Moshe said, you want to know what I would do? So he said, yes. He said, so ask me the shilas again. Every shilah he asked, Rav Moshe was machmir. So the person looked at Rav Moshe and said, I don't understand. The halachah in Hilchos Avelos is kedivrei hamekel. So why are you being machmir in every single shilah? You're telling me that you yourself would be machmir. So Rav Moshe said, you don't understand. You have a suffix. You don't know which way the halachah is. You have one shita that says like this. You have another shita that says like that. So you have a suffix. No, the halachah is that you have a suffix in Hilchos Avelos. You paskin like the mekel. So you could paskin. You have a suffix. You could paskin like the mekel. He says, I don't have a suffix. You're asking me what I would do. I look at the sugya and I hold that the halacha follows the machmir. So to me, it's not a suffix. I'm going to paskin like the machmir. But that's for me, not for you. You have a suffix. The halacha is kedivrei hamekel. So over here, yes, the halacha follows Bais Hillel, not like Bais Shammai. But in most machlokes in Bais Hillel and Bais Shammai, Bais Hillel is machmir that there's a makom to be machmir like Bais Shammai. So you want to be machmir, go ahead and be machmir. Aval bekan. But over here, by this machlokes, ein shom chomer ladas Bais Hillel b'divrei Bais Shammai. Over here, Bais Hillel holds that Bais Shammai shita, that you have to say Krias Shema Shachar is standing and Krias Shema Arvis laying down. Bais Hillel holds it's completely and totally unfounded. There's no room for a chumrah. Why? The Bais Hillel hakol echad bein oimid bein yoshev. He holds it's mamish the same. The kevin shemachmir, and if you're going to be machmir like Bais Shammai, harei moira the halacha ke Bais Shammai. Now, if you're machmir like Bais Shammai, you're being cholik on Bais Hillel, and you are showing that you paskin like Bais Shammai. You're not allowed to paskin like Bais Shammai. V'oid, and furthermore, and this is the part I really wanted to get to, the kevin de Bais Hillel heavy adrash shel ubishach b'chol v'kumecha lizman Krias Shema. Why does Bais Hillel hold that Bais Shammai is totally unfounded? Because they argue in how to darshan the pasuk b'shach b'chol v'kumecha. According to Bais Hillel, b'shach b'chol v'kumecha tells you zman Krias Shema. According to Bais Shammai, it tells you how you have to recite Krias Shema. According to Bais Hillel, there is no mikar for shitas Bais Shammai, because that's not what b'shach b'chol v'kumecha means. But not only that, if you're going to paskin like Bais Shammai, then there's no mikar for zman Krias Shema. V'im kein kishamachmer ki Bais Shammai, if you're going to be machmer like Bais Shammai, dilididhu asi l'shchiva be'erev dafka v'la'amida b'boiker dafka. So now you're paskening like Bais Shammai, that b'shach b'chol v'kumecha is for how you have to physically be situated when you say Krias Shema. V'im kein yispatal ha'yidei zeh zman Krias Shema. Now you're going to be mevatel the halachah of zman Krias Shema. U'lechein nena shkam Rabbi Tarfon. And that's why the Gemara in Bracha says that Rabbi Tarfon was machmer like Bais Shammai and he got an oynish for it. Because now you're creating a problem. You're paskening like Bais Shammai, you're being mevatel the psak of b'shach b'chol v'kumecha zman Krias Shema. And that's why if you paskin, if you try to be machmer like Bais Shammai over here, you are nikra avarian. You're called an avarian. Okay, let's go weiter. So, we're in the middle of Mishnah Berurah Ice Cotton Bais, right by the little ice cotton dalid for the Sharet Zion, which is another fascinating phrase here in the Chavetz Chaim. It says the Mishnah Berurah, what if I want to say Krias Shema by Shachris standing up, but not because I want to be machmer like Bais Shammai. Nothing to do with Bais Shammai. Va'afilu eina kavana ba'amidasai lasis kibei Shammai. I'm not trying to be machmer like Bais Shammai. Ela la'orer hakavana. It's going to be easier for me. We just learned a whole siman about how important it is to have kavana by every word of Krias Shema. It's easier for me to have kavana if I'm standing. So I want to stand in order to have better kavana by Krias Shema. Nothing to do with Bais Shammai. Va'afilu im eina kavana ba'amidasei lasis kibei Shammai. Ela la'orer kavana v'chadoima. Afilu hachi aser. It's still aser. And according to the Aruch HaShulchan that we learned, we could understand why it's aser. Because being makber like Bais Shammai is going to create a problem. So don't be a frumma and tell me that you want to do it in order to have more kavana. No, you can't do it. You don't do it. Ubein bayayim, ubein balayla. Doesn't matter by day, by night. V'afal pikein ain't tzarch b'zalachzer v'likreis b'di'evet. But the Pri Megadim says if you did say Krias Shema by day standing, or you did go ahead and bedafka sit down by Ma'ariv, by Krias Shema, to do like Bais Shammai, you don't have to say Krias Shema over again. It's not pshat that you weren't yoitza. Okay, I have something else to say about this, but we have to move on first. Let's do Mishnah Berurah Katan Vav. Lahachmir, if you want it to be machmer like Bais Shammai. Kasab Yam Shel Shlomo Perek Zayin. The Yam Shel Shlomo writes in Perek Zayin, the Baba Kama Siman Mem Aleph, it says, the Yam Shel Shlomo in Perek Zayin, the Baba Kama Siman Mem Aleph says, Misha machmer b'fnei rabim. Somebody who is noyeg chumra in front of the public, bedavar shemuter, on something that really la halachah is muter, ve'ikal mechash liyuhara, and it looks and there's room to be chayshish that he's doing this for gaiva, menadin oisa, you put him in cherim. V'hainu imoisa yadavar pasha teteroi b'chol Yisrael. That's talking about something that everybody, gans klal Yisrael, is noyeg heter. And this guy is being machmir and he's being noyeg iser, so then it looks like he's being about gaiva, you put him in cherim. V'im yadua she'oisa l'shem shamayim, if it is known for a fact that he's doing it l'shem shamayim and not for gaiva, ein menadin oisai, then you do not put him in cherim. V'im machmir b'fnei rabbi, if he's being noyeg chumra in front of his rebbe, v'rabbi mekel, and his rebbe is mekel, menadin oisai afilo avid l'shem shamayim. Then you put him in cherim, even if he's doing it l'shem shamayim. And that's because Mesorah is so important. You're going to be machmer in front of your rebbe and something that your rebbe is mekel on? I don't care if you're doing it l'shem shamayim. That means that you're showing that you're bigger than your rebbe. If you're bigger than your rebbe, you don't have to listen to anything that your rebbe says, because you're bigger than your rebbe. So that person you put in cherim, even if he's doing it l'shem shamayim. Even if the rebbe is matir something that's not so pashut. Lo yachmer neged divrei rabbi. A Talmud cannot be machmer against his rebbe im lo sheyesh lo raya listar devarov, unless he mamis has a beferish a raya, not like his rebbe. Ad kan l'shaynai of the Yam Shel Shlomo. Ois Katan Zayin lamoid. When does the mechaber say you're called an avarian? If you were sitting and you stood up to be machmer like Bais Shammai by Krias Shema Shel Shachris. Dafka bazehu da'aser. Over there, that's when you're called an avarian, because it's everybody looks at what are you standing up for? It must be to be machmir. But if you're standing, you could sit. Because then people aren't going to say that you're doing it for a chumrah. You're tired, you're feeling shvach, you sat down. And the big problem is by day, if you stand up to be machmir like Bais Shammai. But even by Ma'ariv, you should not bedafka go sit down if you are standing. So the Mishnah Berurah said over here was two things. He's saying that when is it a problem? It's a problem if you stand up by Krias Shema Shel Shachris, because then it looks like you're doing a chumrah. If you go and you sit down, it doesn't look like you're doing a chumrah. I don't even know what the chumrah would be. Bais Shammai holds that by day you're supposed to sit, and then he says that by Ma'ariv you shouldn't sit because it still looks like you're doing like Bais Shammai. If somebody's over on a halachah derabanan, shari lemikra le'avaryana, you're allowed to refer to him as an avarian. And this person is going against the din derabanan because we paskin like Beis Hillel. Kasav El Yerabba B'Shem Maharshal, to be Yom Kippurim, and Yom Kippur, Kuli Alma Moedim Deshari Lamoid, you're allowed to stand. Te'ena Oysa Mishum Yuara, that's not considered Gaiva, Ela Mitzvasa B'Kach. There's a special mitzvah in Yom Kippur davening standing up. Because we want to be like a malach, Shedikram Oimdim. Okay, now, the other thing I wanted to mention over here is, the Mishnah Berurah Nice Cotton Bais said that to stand up for Krias Shema is a problem, even if you're doing it because you feel that you could have better kavanah. Now, let me ask you a question. What if you want to stand up because you're very sleepy and you're afraid that you're going to fall asleep in the middle of Krias Shema? Is that a problem? So the Dirshu, footnote number 6, brings down a Kaf HaChaim. And the Kaf HaChaim says, Ukishu oyef, if somebody is very sleepy, the namoid kidei shelo yirdam, and he wants to stand up so that he shouldn't fall asleep, because of a Kaf HaChaim b'shem sefer chesed la'alofim shemuter, he says that's mutter. Then he also brings down another concept, and that is, we're talking about if you bedafka stand up for Krias Shema. But what if you were already standing? So my eitzah would be, and I do this myself sometimes, if you're very sleepy, instead of standing up bedafka for Krias Shema, stand up already for Birchas Krias Shema. So that you're already standing. And now it's not pshat that you went and you stood up for Krias Shema, which looks like you're being machmer like by Shammai. No, I was already standing. I just never sat down. So now it's not a question of standing up like Divrei by Shammai. It's that I'm already standing. All right. I wanted to get a little bit further over here, but it's things took a little bit longer than expected. So we're going to stop over here. Next time we will continue with Sif Gimel. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This was limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh Hashanah said, Yeshua's for us, Parnasset Sheduklim to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the Bias Goyel Tzedek b'meher of Yameinu. Amen. Be well.